Basically, I try to take it on as any other game. That if it's like a major distraction, like, oh, this is only what this character is meant for, then you have to take that into account. That's bad character design. But generally, I approach it as any other review that way. But if that's a real distraction, then it gets docked for that because there's no real point to the game otherwise. It's just distracting.
You can go.
Yeah. I sometimes get, I guess, the dregs of what Kevin can't review.
Somebody has to.
I happily call out like the bullshit in any of these games. I mean, the thing is, you don't have to go on like a tirade about it, but when it's obvious, or even sometimes when it's subtle, it's worth mentioning. I had to review Mugen Soul Z. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it. It is a way overwrought JRPG, but for some reason it features, I guess, what I would call slime rape, where a demon that's supposed to be thousands of years old but looks like an 8-year-old girl has a questionable encounter with some very active slime. And it doesn't animate it right in front of you. Barely anything is animated in the game. But I was just like, what is this? And not to mention that the main character you control, all her moves on the battlefield are based around her having, like, I guess, mood swings, sort of in like the Super Princess Peach esque way. And so you have to change your mood swings to match enemies, and you can kind of seduce them into like stopping attacking you. Everything around it, aside from it being a very poorly designed game, which is a perfectly good approach. Like, I had to dock it the extra point because it was just absurd.
What'd you end up giving it?
I gave it a
2.5?
2.5 or something like that. Because and I ended up getting like a ton of shit in the comments, like, oh, well, that's Japan, or like, you know, why are you jumping up to defend, like, it's obviously a 1,000-year-old demon or something like that. It's just like, I'm just like,
1,000-year-old demons can be misogynists, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like it's amazing, like what kind of behavior gamers will defend, but I don't care. I will call it out if it's there for me to see, and I admit that my experience playing a game is way different than somebody who's actually marginalized by these games.
Yeah, and I remember in the comments for that, a lot of people were saying that he was insecure in his sexuality or whatever, because they didn't know what his sexuality was, so they felt like they could speak on it. So a bunch of us had to like come to his defense and be like, actually, he's pretty secure. Like, that's not the problem.
Yeah. So, yeah. And just another thing, because we had it written down here, Kevin and I had the opportunity to interview Suda51 at the last, not the most recent E3, the previous years.
Yeah.
14.
14?
Yeah. And you know, Suda51 is known for making very outrageous, outlandish games or whatever, but women aren't his high point. Particularly with Killer is Dead, you have what are these
missions?
Yeah, like these weird mini games where you're trying to like get with women and stare at their boobs, but not.
Yeah, and you have to like get like upskirt photos of them.
Right, and I would say like that was a point where I had a conflict where I guess I chickened out of asking, why do you hate women? You know, and I think. I mean, not that I had to ask that question, but I think to an extent I did our audience or a potential audience a disservice by not addressing elephants out in the room, or at least in my mind. I think it's more important that we get more comfortable with going, hey man, not cool.
Having been in a couple of those conversations, Gil, like now looking back, like I guarantee you the translator would have sanitized it. Like it would have become, why are you moderately uncomfortable with women? You know, like it would have been, they wouldn't have done it. It wouldn't have happened that way.
That's a full paragraph translated to, he's not. Next question. Yeah.
So speaking of that, jumping from reviews to events, we go to a lot of press events, press junkets, and some of these press events are kind of straight-oriented.
and so or feature a game that is very heavily straight oriented. And so I just wanted to have you speak about some of the events that you've been to that you felt really uncomfortable at.
Honestly, like even at events that aren't like about a game that's about a man searching for his wife or his kid, they still
All
like
games.
basically all, there are some games that don't have that, and still
WWE.
at their events will have like all these heteronormative kind of things happening, like, you know, pretty girls handing out stuff and handing out food, and I'm like, but your game's not even about that, so what are you doing? I don't know. But, so I mean, in general, even just as a woman, when I go to events, sometimes just right off the bat, when I was first starting, it definitely was a little bit more intimidating because, you know, I was like, where are the other girls? I was like, am I it? There was a few where it was like, it was
Not only are you one of the few girls, you're,
Yeah.
so it's like kind of a strange experience, I guess, for you.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are straight male oriented, and but I don't know if that really intersects your audience, like what you really want out of the experience. So
Yeah, like honestly, like I've been to 2 events this year where there were other female writers like asking questions, but they weren't like the press events that I normally go to. And honestly, it's like some events, it's like I'll see a bikini-clad woman like handing out drinks or food or whatever, and honestly, it's like I'd rather see a woman like holding a controller with a notepad in her pocket right next to me playing the same game, rather than like handing out little goodies at the end of the night. Like, I think that's more important. So,
And it's not even just
Yeah.
like game-specific events. I mean, we see that at E3 all the time.
yeah,
Ghostbusters
yeah, this
has
year,
come up.
yeah,
Ghostbusters Match 3 game had quite a promotion.
yeah,
Yeah, they were displaying the Ecto-1 and 2 girls that were barely wearing anything.
Yeah, I remember I was on my way to another appointment at E3, and at that point I hadn't seen any booth babes, so I was like, oh, well, this is great. And then I walked by and I saw like the awesome Ghostbusters car, and I was like, that's awesome. And then right next to it was just like standing like 3 feet away, totally like away from the car, women dressed as Ghostbusters with like cleavage hanging out to here, taking photos with people, and I'm like, but the car is right there.
And who doesn't remember the Ghostbusty babes from the
Right?
first 2 movies, right?
Don't forget that. Yeah. I'm like,
Well,
Busties.
what
Yeah.
I've learned from wargaming events is that all generals who are the generals who like make sure that all the tanks are going everywhere are women in scantily clad uniforms with Generalissimo hats. That is clearly because that is who is represented at those events. So that must be who is actually commanding the
That's
tanks.
just history.
right.
And I'd like to throw a note that if it seems that we're fixating on sexism compared to being queer, you have to keep in mind that one, sexism does intersect with the problems that queer people face, and you know, as a gay man, clearly bikini-clad women are lost on me. You know, and even Jess as a lesbian doesn't necessarily want to see. She wants to see empowered women, like
Yeah,
she said.
exactly,
She
like-
doesn't want to see necessarily bikini-clad women. So
yeah.
when you enter a space where people are hired, women are hired to tantalize the audience, it becomes extremely apparent that I am not the audience, but I am there to work and get paid. So why aren't I being included? I mean, these are kind of just the questions that just cross your mind when you're queer and you attend these things. So even if it does, so even though that intersects with sexism and opposite feminism, you know, it definitely intersects with my queerness. Like, I don't understand why women are just these advertisement objects that are put out there that are telling me, well, Gil, we didn't think of you. And I'm not saying I want like hot guys, although it'd be cool.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, you do
Yeah.
get what I like to call a booth buff. Like at E3 this year, about 10 minutes after I saw the Ghostbusters girls, I turned the corner at Indiecade, and there was 2 very scantily clad superhero men that I was more than happy to take a picture with. For balance, of course. For balance.
Yeah, they were wearing like
For balance.
Speedos or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For equal opportunity objectification.
It's a start.
Is it?
No, it's not.
I honestly don't think there should be booth babes or booth buffs at E3. It's not that.
Yeah.
I don't think they should have them anymore.
Cosplayers.
I think cosplay. I've seen
Yeah.
really good cosplay at E3, but it's like too few and far between. Honestly, it's
I mean,
like,
we're there to play games. We're there to
Exactly.
Right.
engage with the games
Yeah.
and the developers and write about them. And as I
Yeah.
said, get paid to do so. So we're beyond the stage of like sexual titillation and things
Yeah.
like that.
And working off of what Gil said earlier about not feeling like you're right in the space, like back when maybe 2008, whenever Saints Row 2 came out, I went to a THQ event in LA. THQ no longer exists, but I went to that event and we were just playing the game professionally for the first 2 hours, and then since we're at this extravagant bar, 2 hours later, like from the ceiling, I had a bunch of aerial curtain acrobats coming down and doing like stretches right in front of my face. I'm like, where am I? What happened? And I mean, like looking in hindsight, I understood this is Saints Row 2, of course. I'm like, okay, I guess it fits with the game. But then as a professional, like trying to mingle with other people with, like, she's like right there, right in front of me, and I'm like, I don't know what to do about this situation. And it's not something that maybe the PR reps really like addressed. They're like, oh man, this would be awesome. This would be cool if this happened. And I was like, I didn't know what to say because I'm trying to talk professionally with them. But at the end of the day, I had to preview this game, and so I just ignored it. But I guess if I went back now, I probably would have said something to one of those PR reps and said, hey, this is not necessarily bad, but like just be aware that there are other people in the industry that may be uncomfortable with this. And that's just one example of an event that I went to that was a little bit, uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that wasn't too long ago.
That wasn't that long ago. So at Game Revolution, we have quite a bit of a diverse cast of writers, but there may not be a lot of at least openly queer editors or writers in the game industry, at least in the major media outlets out there. So I just kind of wanted to ask why, like, maybe how you feel about why that is.
Well, I think it's because like a lot of the major gaming news sites, just like that feeling they give off to people is not very diverse. Like, I don't want to name names, but there are some gaming outlets who in their recruitment material specifically say men still, and actually there was an article on femhype.com about a particular outlet, and I just thought it was still amazing, like in this day and age, that somebody could have that kind of like narrow-minded like stuff in their recruitment material, like, and so I mean there are other outlets that do recruit like more diverse ways, but they're not mainstream gaming news sites.
I mean, my take on it is that this is the diversity or lack thereof in games journalism staff is part and parcel of like the 30-year industry problem with representation. The people making the games were not diverse. The games themselves did not present diversity, and so the people who write about games, they're the people who are passionate about games. They started blogging, they started writing for themselves or whatever. They started on forums, and when the majority of the games that you see represent, the straight cis white male, the majority of the writers that flock to it will be straight cis white men. That's just kind of a given, and now it's a 30-year-old problem that we're all of a sudden, I guess, it's in the limelight, and we're all going like, what the fuck? And not that it hasn't been a problem before. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say, like, it just feels like lately, especially with events like GaymerX, and with the creation and subsequent backlash with tropes versus women in video games from Anita Sarkeesian, it's all of a sudden like that you have these websites suddenly going like, oh shit, we have like queer people among us? That's cool. Yeah. Maybe we'll hire some. Maybe not.
I mean, there actually are some sites that that do actually have more inclusive like policies built in, like in the commenting system, which I really appreciate. Like they have at the end of all the articles, they're like, these are our guidelines. So they're constantly reminding their communities about like, what's okay and what's not okay, which is good. But
there are a few mainstream sites that
Yeah.
actually have in their hiring policy non-discrimination, like, and they mention that they specifically that they are hiring diverse.
I think I was
like,
just trying to
populations.
avoid naming the site that I wanted to name.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's right. Yeah, I did that was a little
What's
mistake on
a
my
site
part.
that hasn't been around forever? Just like that doesn't exist anymore.
What do you mean? Which
Yeah,
one?
I was gonna say,
Oh,
it was
crap.
one up.
Oh, yeah.
It was one up. It was there.
No.
Yeah, they don't exist
No, it's
anymore.
okay.
They
I
were
was like,
bought for that reason.
like,
Stick it to them.
yeah. Honestly, like a fix is just that like what I would love to see is just more queer people applying for writing positions, because I know like the last time we hired freelancers, like I remember you telling me like that there was mostly men applying.
Yep.
You know?
It was pretty much, I would say, 10-1, 15-1, just from male and female. And then on top of that, of course, you don't have to say whether or not you're openly gay or not in your resume. That but from the amount of people that were to apply for a position for either associate editor or freelancer, we just don't get that many queer voices out there or queer people just applying for us. So there comes a problem with representation. And from the other panel that you were at, actually, with Arthur saying about how we need more diverse people as writers in development, we need also more queer voices in the game industry. We need a lot more people talking about these things so that we can bring them up and really spread the word about how important LGBTQ issues are in our industry. So this is something that is that needs to be addressed, and having more hires in any kind of major media outlet would really help.
A unique aspect to queerness, though, of course, is that people can be in the closet, and so this is also a symptom of the larger society. We need queers represented more in media so that queers feel like coming out and representing themselves, and that it's not such an issue of just like, well, I don't know, no gay men applied. Like, it's just kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
you
Like,
just,
don't announce
you just
it
start,
when you apply.
You just start knowing the people, around you.
Yeah.
And I mean, even to an extent with trans identity, a lot of trans people are not out about their identities either, and that stifles them. And so even if they are applying, we don't know it, and they're not representing their voice because they don't feel safe. And it's games. We're playing. We should feel safe.
And a little part of it is a lot of these sites nowadays demand that you have video experience. And I'm not saying that this is what's going on, but a lot of it could be a mark against you if you are someone who's a part of the community. They're like, well, maybe you're not as marketable. And I'm like, that's not okay either. And so part of the hiring process might limit you if you are openly gay, much like if you were an actor or a musician. And I think that in gaming we're seeing it a lot better now. But yeah, that's just something that is important to address.
Well, I think it's getting a lot better because I feel what I've seen over the past year is like a lot of people who are queer are setting up like blogs and Patreons, and I actually subscribe to a lot of Patreons because a lot of writers that I love no longer work for like major outlets, but they're still writing amazing stuff. They're just doing it on their own, which I think is actually can be very beneficial. So, and it's also something that could potentially get you a better writing job down the line. So I really am a huge supporter of, getting your voice out there any way you can, and blogs are a great way to do it. So, and that's actually kind of a way that some of us got our start. Like I know Blake was writing a blog, and I was working with him at the time at an art school, and I saw his blog, and I was like, that's fucking amazing. I know a guy. So I introduced him to Nick, and he's been writing for us ever since.
Yay!
But and when I started, I wasn't really a writer. I wrote on my spare time, but I was a video editor. It just so happened we had an article about Mass Effect, and there was an anti-feminist article written by a supposed feminist lesbian, kind of trashing femship, and we know we can't be having that, so so basically I wrote my first piece about like basically attacking that article and showing why it was just a complete farce, but I had to do it from my own voice, and that was the first time I had ever been like very publicly out, and I actually ended up coming out to my extended family after writing that article. Because I had been out to my friends for about 6 or 7 years at that point, but I hadn't come out to my parents. So basically, I wrote the article, sat down on the phone, called my dad, called my mom, and came out, and then that's history. So it's like, once you get past something like that, it makes it so much easier to continue on.
Yeah.
Really. So.
It was really refreshing when I started, I think in 2007. And that was the time when I just got out of college. You know, I figured out I was gay then. And then I was like, wow, are people going to hire me? I don't really know. I'm scared. And then I went to the current founder, the founder there that was there before. His name was Duke Ferris. And I told him very flat out during the interview process that I was openly gay. I took a risk, to me at least. And he was like, he's totally fine with it. And that was a really, a breath of fresh air. And also really surprising. It was like, thank you for quelling all my fears. And that really helped. And I wonder what your experiences were being hired by us, or being hired in general in terms of being gay.
I was out publicly when I was applying to Game Revolution, but I wasn't telling everyone. It's not like the first line in my resume. So I remember I was there maybe a couple of months, and I was drive to the office, and I was picking up a game, and Duke was there, and we talked for a little bit, and I said oh yeah, I've got a date tonight. He's like, oh, what's her name? And I say, well, his name is, I can't even remember what the name was. Shows how good the relationship was. And he just looked at me and was like, oh, have fun. That was the long and the short of it. That was the entire conversation about that. Never felt scared or anything.
I can't believe you forgot me, Kevin.
I love you.
I was not out. So this is actually really me coming out, being here and being my authentic self. So, and seeing how that evolves and how that goes. I've been out to my friends for a while, but when they hired me, I was not aware that I was queer. I was just like, wow, I just don't, things don't work right for me. And so I'm just not gonna engage with things. And then my life started to change, and yeah. So, and having a group of amazing people who are all out and who are all really awesome about it has been really great. Because especially in the industry where it's oh, I don't have to be afraid of this, has been really awesome. So thanks you guys.
You're very welcome.
You're welcome. We love you.
We all love Blake.
He brought us tea.
Blake loves
did.
lamp.
My experience, I got hired as a result of their first panel at the first GaymerX.
Yeah.
Well, not directly as a result. He said we're hiring at the end. And so I did actually apply to be a freelancer. So obviously my gayness was not the issue there. But if I could lay some praise on Nick and our recently gone reviews editor Daniel, and our Uber boss at Crave Media, Anthony Severino, I was never told not to write about the random social justice-y stuff. I would ask about it, and they'd be like, well, if you think it's worth mentioning, do it. And then at some point I was just writing that stuff, and Nick would just post it. I was never discouraged, and I find that very empowering. Should I start pitching to other sites, I feel like I am in a much better staging ground for writing more comfortably about these issues of representation than I might have been if I didn't have the explicit or implicit encouragement to do so. So it has a big impact. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, also on that note, they really don't, it's been a really great experience working for GaymerX because, they really do consider all your feelings when you're going into a piece if you suggest something. And when the Left Behind DLC came out for The Last of Us, I had so many feels at the end of that, and I played it all in one sitting. And then directly after that, Ellen Page had just come out, and it was on the same day, and I remember I was on the verge of tears, and I wrote this piece about it and how I felt, and I was just pitched it to him and our other editor Daniel at the time, and they were like, yep, let's put it up, it's an article. And I was like, it was just really nice to have that recognition and be able to share something publicly about a moment in time. So.
And I know that there's a lot of fear out there for just being a queer writer in the industry. And I guess I wanted to ask this question of whether you believe that LGBTQ people who are in the industry or who are writing are already perceived automatically as someone who's part of the PC police or an SJW, and one of those horrible words. But yeah, people have commented.
I've been called the keyboard gangster.
I was going to say,
Which is awesome.
if I may,
It was my Twitter tag.
if I may, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to state for the Congressional Committee that, yes, this is true. We do have that reputation. Thank you.
I mean, at this point, their best insult is like now perceived more as a compliment because it's just been so overused and it's so ridiculous. So
It's not even a negative stream of words.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not.
If you're going to insult me, at least try.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's sort of like it's a shame that incorporating your queerness or any other identity in your writing would be considered a political act, an agenda. I hate that aspect of it, and not to say that I don't support the politics of representing yourself and such, but it should not by default mean that I'm trying to pass on like some kind of upending message for video games. I literally just want like to be represented, as I assume all of you do too. So I don't understand why me writing about how I perceive games slightly differently than the clear target audience is suddenly like, you know, me staging a riot.
Yeah.
It isn't. It might be like a quiet one.
Yeah, and if there's anybody out there who's thinking about pursuing journalism and they're afraid of that, like backlash that you get from people like that, just don't be afraid of that. Just write what you want to write, and because there's always going to be somebody saying something negative about what you write. Like I've written pieces that I've worked on for weeks, done like freaking like more work than I ever did when I was in high school, and broken down all my ideas, and then like 2 seconds after it's posted, you got some asshole in the comment section just tearing it down without even really reading it. So it's like there's always going to be somebody saying something negative.
And I just want to add,
Yeah.
don't be afraid, but do consider your own safety.
Well, you do have to.
You can
protect
feel
it.
free
Yeah.
to maintain anonymity if necessary, but
Yeah.
don't find a way to express yourself. We appreciate it.
And
Yes.
you would be surprised at, especially some of those really horrible comment sections, just how many people will not only come to your defense, but come to the defense of the article or to
Yeah.
the idea itself.
Yeah, we've actually
So-
noticed that our community has started to kind of go on the defensive when people are starting to attack in the comment section when we do diversity articles. And
And it's fantastic.
Yeah,
It's
it's really nice to
empowering.
see.
It's
Yeah.
lovely.
And I guess broadly, have you received any harassment either on internet or online or in person because of your articles?
Because of articles.
Well,
Or not, or outside of it?
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I moderated briefly, but I've since stopped as a method of self-care. And when I did, I deleted a comment of somebody's, and I was a bit naive at the time, so he was in the comment section freaking out about who deleted his comment. I made it known that I was the one who did it. And then ever since then, that was like maybe a year or so ago, every now and again on a review or an article I write, I just notice that same person commenting like, oh, this was a nice review, but she'll do better next time. Like just, and it's just something that I kind of laugh at now. I'm like, you know what? But it's just I asked one of our editors when it first started, I was like, you know, I think it's kind of weird that he's kind of singling me out because you guys have moderated him too, and they were like, yeah, you're right. That probably wouldn't have happened if it was one of us. And they're like, and they're guys who had been writing for the site for a while. So
Yeah.
Me personally, I
Yeah.
guess
Not-
I guess shitty comments for my writing when I decide to call out like one overly booby game or something like that. But the only time I haven't received much harassment, and that is probably an intersection of the fact that I am still a cis white male. I don't think gay white men get as much shit as women, people of color, trans people. We're kind of, you know, and there are all kinds of reasons societal for that. But at one point I responded to some popular Twitterer, I think Brendan Keogh or somebody like that. And I talked about how homophobic Doug Tenapel is. If you're not familiar with Doug Tenapel, he created Earthworm Jim, Earthworm Jim 2, The Neverhood, and most recently Armicrog, which is getting tanked by reviewers. But he's very vitriolic about how he doesn't support same-sex marriage or marriage equality, even going so far as to take his toxicity over to our brethren at gaygamer.net into their comment section. And so I'm disgusted by him, and I have actually I actively stopped wanting to buy his games or anything like that. I don't want to support him whatsoever. And I got two. Has anyone heard of Gamergate? I had two Gamergators.
My head's gonna explode
I had
now.
two Gamergators jump in my mentions for like the good part of 2 hours about how ridiculous it is. Like, if you don't like it, don't buy it. I don't buy it, you know. And it's just like, are you gonna stop buying like every game once you find out somebody doesn't support your politics? It's just like, to an extent, yes. Just asking the base of questions, but the fact is, like, they were coming on the offensive because I dare criticize somebody who made something that they loved as a child. And it's just like, I loved it too. It breaks my heart, actually, when somebody that I nostalgically love turns out to not want me to exist.
I got a lot of flack for hating Earthworm Jim, personally. That was a side thing, though. I hate Earthworm Jim.
Well, it looks like you have
And
good
that's
instincts.
okay.
It's
That's
okay.
that's
It's
fine.
totally
So
fine.
dumb.
Totally
All
fine.
right. No, when I are you hiding or are you trying to console me? I'm consoling. I buy other games. No, when I first came out online, this was before I was writing reviews, but I was writing them for myself, and I'd come out on my message boards. This was 10 years ago, and we had somebody on the boards that would actively kind of try to stir trouble in every thread. It was just, I like the word slurry, where he likes to just throw slurs everywhere he possibly can. And when he started going after, when he started using the F word, I started going after him. And he eventually got banned from the boards. But I found out, like, he was so aggressive online, just vitriolic. And then I went to a convention, like maybe a year after that, and I met him in person. And I shook his hand, and once he found out who I was, his handshake went very limp, and he ran. And he kept running.
We hold.
Yeah. Nobody's going to be, very few people will be quite that vitriolic if you look them in the eye.
It's true.
So online, yeah, that's what cemented in my head from that. Somebody could be such a terrible human being when they're doing it anonymously.
When they don't realize that there is a human being on the other end.
But once they realize that, and once they're held accountable for it, it's actually quite funny to watch them squirm. I enjoyed that.
And Nick, you gotta say?
I'm not going to mention that.
Okay, yeah.
Going off a different angle, just talking about straight-oriented gaming, like, how much do you think that marketing in video games contributes to the industry being straight-oriented? And a lot of the marketing
All of it.
is not only meant for just gamers in general, but also targeted toward us, because we have to see trailer after trailer after trailer. So I just want to see if you want to speak about
it's
it.
hard enough to see like a woman on the cover of a AAA title, let alone a queer individual, and it's kind of sad just thinking about like how far off we are from actually having that. And the most recent example I could think of is the whole Ellie cover incident, where like it was so controversial just to have her a little bigger than Joel, a little closer to the person looking at the box. But I mean, that's a reality in our time. Like, you know, that was an actual fight for them to get. But I'm happy that they actually hung in there and like let that happen.
Some victory there.
I know it's a small victory, but
But it's a victory.
I'll take it.
And and marketing still incorporates the trope of the straight white male, typically getting the girl for his heroic accomplishments made real in the game, and the other issue is that even when marketing isn't perpetuating this straight male centric ideas, it is still on like level one when it comes to bringing more women in. There's the recent Call of Duty commercial where they're praising like this white guy for his accomplishments in Call of Duty until he gets his ass completely whooped by this
Cara Delevingne.
this white model who swoops in or whatever, and then they start talking about her. And
But it's right at the very end.
Right, it's right at the very end. But like the issue I take with that is just like, although it's awesome to have this badass woman, and by the way, strong female character does not have to refer to a physically strong female character. It's supposed to be a strongly written female character. So that's one thing people get wrong. But the other thing is that although it's awesome to have this badass woman step in and take over and show herself, this is still a presentation of the battle of the sexes. It's still presented as women needing to prove themselves, or women having had proven themselves. And the point is, like, we're trying to get to the point where men and women and people of other genders are playing together, and not necessarily, and I mean competing in the game, but not competing to the point where they have to prove their gender's worth. So it's just like, even when you have games, because Call of Duty does let you play as a woman now.
Yeah. Although they did screw up some of the pronouns in the game. Like,
Call of Duty is still a mess.
No, I know,
but,
exactly.
Although Call of Duty,
Still Call of Duty.
Call of Duty still
That's not an
lets you play as a woman, and
How many people work
I
on
think
that
I think it has race options as well, although not as many hair. Although like the game, although we now have like developers on board and more publishers on board, a lot of publishers and a lot of marketing is still way behind the games that they're promoting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
It's messed up.
Well, in
okay,
particular, I actually saw a movie like a week ago, and it was like a commercial for esports, and it was like really well done, except for the fact that there were no women. It was just all dudes. It's like the whole thing was about like, you know what it's like to be a man, and like I'm like, no, I don't.
Nope.
I really don't. So I was just laughing during this commercial. It's like it was horrible. I was like, and it was made recently, so I'm like, it's not okay. Like,
Yeah. And you can talk about it almost subliminally. I think that correctly. Subliminally. And even if I look at the advertisements that are our own site, and we separate editorial and advertising like many sites do, it's almost like here are the car commercials. Here are the commercials about war. Here are commercials about, you can kind of like see what they're trying to say, like, and that if this is a space meant for the straight male audience and not for everybody else.
I mean, if I may bring up like our sister site, Action Trip,
Jesus Christ.
where we have our wonderful friend Carrie Honey, who she's been writing for them for years. She's one of their primary writers because I think they only have 3.
Yeah.
She
She writes everything
she's
almost.
awesome. She's an amazing gamer. But she's a woman and she should be respected, which is why I have a problem with the fact that every one of her articles is paired with an advertisement for their Babe of the Day article.
Yeah,
And although
Yeah.
we can joke about that, the fact is like, I want better for her. I want
really sad.
I want better for.
Yeah, it's really sad because she writes really good work, but the
Yeah.
reason their site gets views is because these stupid ads with the women in lingerie, and it's just ridiculous. Yeah.
Like you're, and that's more dissonance. You're being undermined by your own website.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think at some point, there were some commenters who didn't even know she was a woman because her name's Carrie. So some men are named Carrie. So.
And this is the last question that we have for here before we open up to Q&A. How long do you think it will be before we get to review a game with a queer leading protagonist in a AAA game that isn't user created?
Well, unless Sam moves in with Lara Croft in the next Lara Croft game, Tomb Raider game, then it's going to be a while. That's what I think.
7 years, 4 months, and 12 days. I've done that.
Exactly.
This reminds me of something. I was at PlayStation Experience last week, and Genova Chen was on a panel with a bunch of other developers on the future of game narratives and how he described American games when he started to make games. Because his games, the characters, they don't necessarily have a character, or like Flower or Flow.
Journey. Yeah.
Journey, like Journey, the character is pretty agender. Like how he described American games, and he was like, well, I just couldn't do it because I don't understand football. And he was like, and they were like, well, what do you mean? He was like, well, every character in like an American game had like big giant shoulder pads and the armor and was like running at each other. And so,
Oh my God! Wow.
And it's like, no, Genova, those are pauldrons.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, the only big AAA developer I can think of that has the potential to do it within like the next 5 years, maybe, is CD Projekt Red, because they have Ciri, and Ciri is an awesome character and is canonically bisexual. So, if they, I mean, yes, the Witcher franchise does have its issues with people of color, but it still has potential to have her be a main protagonist.
I do wonder how much of that is going back to the source material of the books, because those books are really feminist.
Yeah.
But the previous 2 games were not connected to the books and were really sexist.
Yeah.
So.
But they
Well,
it managed.
the first
yeah.
game was really sexist
Yeah.
with the collectible cards for having sex with women. Well drawn, but still.
Yeah. I know, but it's a sad reality. But they have that character, and the way they design their games is so there's one protagonist, so they could potentially do it.
In our discussion regarding this question, because we are semi-prepared, in our discussion about this, I realized that the only like major AAA or indie game, that makes you play as a canonically gay character is the Left Behind DLC for The Last of Us. I can't think of a single other game that makes you play the gay character whose gayness will be addressed within the game. We came up with like one that lets you choose a canonically gay character is Borderlands the Pre-Sequel, where you can play as Athena, who's with what's her name, Jenny?
I think so.
Yeah, but the point is, like, you have a choice. You have a choice to go, like, well, due to my homophobia, I'm not going to play as the gay character.
Oh, it's Janie Springs.
Janie Springs, that's
believe,
it.
yeah.
I'm a good gamer.
It's
But the Left Behind DLC, which you can buy as a separate standalone game, is the only game I have ever played and I can think of where you have to play as a gay character and you're going to be confronted with the fact that they're gay.
Exactly.
If you guys have any other examples of an actual like popular mainstream game, please.
Or
I'm curious.
alternatively, an LGBTQ character is Dumbledored in, like
The extra canonical.
yeah, extra canonical. Like the character Scout, who's the main player character in Disney Fantasia Music Evolved, is trans, but you would never know that from playing the game. You would only know that from hearing a panel of the creators talk about creating the game and how they made the character trans, but then Disney wouldn't let them have it in the game.
Yeah, it doesn't count.
If you have to,
counts.
if you have to read an interview
It's
or
not
an
enough.
article to find out the character in the game you just played is not the identity that you assumed they were, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I guess
But the Star Wars EU, everything about that told me everything about Star Wars.
didn't George Lucas recently destroy that?
No, he sold it and then Disney destroyed it.
Oh, okay,
Drink some more tea.
noted.
Would you like some more tea?
I would actually. It's time for.
Well, while Blake gives everyone
This
tea,
is Blake's first panel, so he's bringing his tea, like first panel ever, and it's like yeah.
So we're teaching him the ropes. He's,
Yeah.
We told him it was customary.
but not too much. Not too much. That's perfectly fine. Thank you. Thank you.
all right. So we're pressed for time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
If-
if you have
if
any
anybody has
questions for us, sure. Do we have a mic for him, or just
I think
just shout it
he
out?
might be able to hear you.
Yeah, it's loud.
Yo.
Kind of going off of what you just said, how about a villain or anti, but I can't say villain. Especially nowadays where villains are getting a little bit more attention. So, for example, Far Cry 3 boss is a gay character, but he's not a gay character, but he's the main.
Is he actually explicitly gay in the game?
It's,
I mean, he does he does seem like he borders on
Like,
there. But.
I'll be honest, I didn't play that one.
So like a
Yeah.
character like say Revolver Ocelot, who is ambiguously either good or evil, but is canonically, I think, bisexual, but is definitely into Big Boss. Like that's
But I'm sorry, I didn't let you finish your question.
No, yeah, what do you guys think is a step in the right direction? Because there's still a leading character. It might not be the playable character.
Yeah.
But the
It,
antagonist.
it makes a difference. It's just having a playable gay character is still like this really, really tough step.
Like this tough
Yeah.
barrier.
Yeah,
to pass.
like,
Yeah. Like,
and we don't understand
yeah.
it because it's the easiest thing to write. We're
Yeah.
gay. But when it comes to villains, there's a problematic trope, and this is perpetuated by Disney movies in particular, where you have now Voss isn't particularly effeminate, although I would say that there's some coding to him that would read off as queer. So I mean, he's a good psychopathic character, but you have the risk of the villain being an effeminate gay man, and it kind of has this trope of gay people as evil. And I'm not saying never write a gay villain. I'm just saying like you have to understand that gay people run the gamut. Gay people are not just men. Gay men are not just effeminate. And if gay men are effeminate, that shouldn't be this attribute that contributes to their villainy, unless they were oppressed for it. Like that would make for an interesting story, but you didn't see that in the movies we grew up with.
Yeah, like everybody loves a good villain, like me in particular, but we need more positive examples, and I think that's why like I really would prefer it to be a protagonist that's the hero of the story.
I mean, even an anti-hero. Like it's just
Yeah,
I
or an
want to
anti-hero,
play
like-
as a character that's queer.
I want a video game Midnighter.
As long as they're
Does
like,
anybody else know Midnighter?
Midnighter.
I want a video game Midnighter. I want the Punisher, but I want him gay. That's all
There you go,
Midnighter is.
there you go.
Overly violent,
yeah.
happens to love a
You
man.
guys wanna go?
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
It's not that hard.
Thank you for the question. Do you have
Does
any other
anybody have
questions?
another?
I just thought of, I think one more game that has a gay protagonist, sort of. Like, I know in the new Mortal Kombat game, there is
Yeah, Kung Jin, I
right.
believe. Yeah.
it's not like a gay storyline.
Isn't he
Right.
DLC?
No.
No, he's
Oh, good.
he's in the main.
He's
game.
selectable,
Yay.
and you
He-
do have to play him in the storyline, the
storyline.
campaign, I believe. But I don't know if his sexuality addressed in the campaign as well.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
I
think
I
like
understand
4
that it
chapters.
is. He's right,
Yeah.
and
Two.
I would say the fact that we're kind of going like, but he's selectable, but you have to,
Well,
you have to
well,
play.
like-
Like the fact that we're doing
We're
this
doing
just
this
shows
is
that we don't
like-
have enough characters.
Yeah, well, the way that story.
But that's a good example, thank
yeah,
you.
it is a good example. I guess the only problem would be the way that story works is you're jumping in and out of everybody's storyline. So it's like he's still not the protagonist that he deserves to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think honestly all those characters have really good backstories, but like it would be nice if it was a standalone game, maybe just about.
And
that.
NetherRealm oddly stepped up for fighting game stories.
Yeah.
And we,
Yeah, they
we
did.
had talked about when
Yeah.
we were preparing the character of Bayonetta as being canonically gay, but
Yeah.
being clearly designed for the male gaze. So,
Yeah.
you know, you split that difference, and so it's another of those cases of something that does something really right, but also
Yeah.
does some things really wrong.
And there is a panel about that. So.
At 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
We're not on it.
I was going to say, are you in that one?
All right.
No.
I think these two have to go to an ethics panel, but does anybody else have any other questions?
We have 3 minutes left.
Would you mind
Oh,
speaking
what's your
up a
name?
little bit?
Oh, hey.
Would you mind speaking up a little bit? I'm sorry. Would you mind speaking up a little bit?
Sorry. Okay. Theater voice. So I write for Campaign, and it's I've had criticisms thrown at me, not by readers from the article, but by other people I've shown, like friends or friends of friends, usually not people actually like me, that have basically been like, well, you're only criticizing it because you're biased, because I'm queer and because I'm a woman. Do you guys?
So?
That's not, but that's the thing. It doesn't make you biased. It just makes you like
It gives you
a
a point of
different
view.
point of view. Like so,
But I
yeah.
So what was your question?
really struggle finding an answer for that besides so. So do you guys ever have that problem? Like, do you have an answer for that that's a little bit more, maybe not necessarily widely accepted, but a little bit more academic than so what?
I can address that a little bit. I think if you'd like. I think you have to account for the fact that social justice always has to happen for the disenfranchised, because the people who aren't disenfranchised don't need it. So when
Yeah,
we're
we have
talking
gotten
about
that
our
before.
issues, we're the ones who are actually feeling the brunt of of those problems. So we're the ones who have to speak in order for any change to happen, or nothing will happen. So you actually have an ethical responsibility to bring these things up,
Exactly.
to see that
Yeah.
that change happens, or else it just never will. Because,
Yeah.
Yes.
please
And-
do.
That's pretty
And-
Please do. It's
and-
being taped, I think.
And from your question, you are bisexual, right? So the fact is, you are bisexual. That is what you identify as.
Yeah.
Everything you do is going to be informed by your bisexuality. And when something runs counter to your identity, you're going to have a feeling about it. The fact that you're expressing it is you trying to tell these, I guess, well-meaning allies about yourself, and they're actively rejecting you. I mean, people really do have to consider, like, when you're trying to express a piece of your identity, why are they immediately riling against it or going like, you're just doing it because you're bi? Well, duh. I mean,
But we could
I know
almost
I know it's
argue
not
that
eloquent to go
every
so.
game
but-
developer is making these games about male protagonists because they're biased because they're straight.
But, you know,
but
if-
we don't say that because it's not true. They're just that's what they wrote about.
Yeah. So if they're coming from a good place, they should understand that you're trying to express to them, to your friends and family,
Yeah.
what it's like to be you. They should care about that.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for attending this panel, and round of applause for everybody.
All right.